Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Robert Jaquay. We take it for granted that when we throw something away, it's taken care of. But where does it go and how is it dealt with? On today's show, we have as our guest Joe Stockbridge, who is the Director of Environmental Services for the town of Colonie. He manages our landfill. Let's talk to Joe and find out more about it. Joe, I want to thank you very much for agreeing to come on the show today.
You're very welcome, Bob.
Before we start talking about the landfill and solid waste management, I'd like to give our viewers some of your background. So it's over to you.
My name is Joe Stockbridge. I'm the Director at the Environmental Services Division of the Department of Public Works. I've been with the town almost 18 years now. I came from the DEC. I was the regulator for solid waste in this area for a period of 2-3 years, and had about 10 years of capacity in the wastewater and solid waste background before I came to the town. So it was kind of a nice marriage, nice transition from regulating a facilities to actually having to work one and make it real.
And run it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been great having you here. I couldn't believe it's 18 years, but okay. Now, when I grew up, we would occasionally, I think every week, we would pack up our garbage and we would go to the dump. We're changing our terms, but it's still basically a dump. So why don't we talk about what is the landfill?
Okay. In our business, a dump is a 4-letter word. We don't use that term. It is a landfill. It's a much different environment that we place our wastes in now than there was 10, 15, even 20 years ago. Landfills have come a long way. They're a lot more environmentally sensitive than they were when they were qualified, that 4-letter word. There's liner systems that account for any liquids that come out of the waste. There's gas collection systems that deal with the air emissions from landfills. There's a whole series of regulations that deal with how landfills are to be operated. So things have changed dramatically since the old conventional dumps, as you term it. I'm reluctant to use that word, but dumps.
Okay, we won't use it again.
But the landfills have changed dramatically since those times. They handle materials a lot better. We're actually getting better efficiencies in landfills than we ever did. We didn't really use landfill space very well back 20 years ago. It was, so to speak, out of sight, out of mind. Whatever open space you had, low value land that you had, that was where you located your landfills. And now we actually have siting criteria for where landfills can be sited so that they're in environmentally areas that can handle it environmentally, as opposed to areas that are more environmentally sensitive. There's specific criteria and exclusions for areas that are protective of groundwater sources or endangered species or aquifers. So there's specific reasons why we put landfills where we do now. Historically, that wasn't always the case, but now any of the new landfills, any of the expansions have to address that.
Now, how large is the landfill in town of Colonie?
The town's landfill actually started on a very small portion of the current site. It was about a 12-acre landfill initially. We're now up to about 124 acres on site. A good portion of that is what we call buffer or support zone. Your scales, your buildings for maintenance, your administration building, all those things go in the buffer. Of usable landfill space, you have about 95 to 100 acres.
But it is finite. I mean, there comes a point in time when you've sort of filled it up, right?
Correct. We've had what they call a phased or a cell development at our site. We've actually have 7 areas constructed. We're currently in the process of building. The numbering system doesn't work out because of some misnomers previously, but it's Area 6 Phase 2 is under construction, right. But it's actually our 7th area. And that has capacity through about 2020. So we have landfill capacity out to the year 2020, but you're right, it's a finite capacity. And we're already in the process of looking at what do we do now so that first of all, 2020 may not be 2020. Maybe we can get longer out of the existing cells. But also, what do you do with the waste after 2020 if it is filled?
Right.
We're still going to be generating waste. There are people who would love to say there will be zero waste. That may come in the future. But for today, you have to deal with the waste that we generate, and you need to recycle it, you need to reduce it, you need to reuse it, or you need to dispose of it. And there is finite capacity for disposal.
Now, when we talk about cells, and you have, what do you say, 7 of them, a cell gets filled, and what do you do with it?
The cells, the way that we operate them, you try to use them over about a 5 to a 7 year period so that they would fill over that same time period. That's usually the development cycle also of a new cell. So when you build a new cell, you're already planning on the next cell, because by the time that your new cell is constructed, your existing cell that you just finished will have been filled. When you're done with your cell, you have to cap and close it in accordance with DEC or New York State requirements. They basically require a cover. Just as you have liners that go underneath the cells, you have a liner that goes over the top of the cells. It's called a cap. And that cap is usually a piece of plastic, a liner material similar to the material you use in your liners, going over the top of it, and that would then encapsulate all that waste into the site. They do that for a number of different reasons. One is air emissions, because the waste as it decomposes produces a landfill gas, and we need to capture that landfill gas because it's an odor source, it's an ozone depleting source, and it's a greenhouse gas. So there's a number of reasons, as well as you just don't want people in the neighborhood wouldn't like the odors if you generally admitted it. So it's also a way of containing all the materials. It's a way of stopping moisture from getting into the cells and thereby creating more leachate. So there's a number of reasons why you cap a cell. Ultimately, there are uses for that property after the cells have been capped and closed. Generally, they're what we call light recreation or passive recreational. You don't want people in active scenarios where they might be digging into a cap or needing to modify the terrain of a cap, because then you'll have issues with the integrity of the cap. But there are actual plans for use of the property after the facility is consumed.
We're going to talk more about the gas. I mean, there's hundreds of questions that are coming up in my mind, but let's go down to the real basic. Now, someone, takes their garbage out on whatever day it is that they get picked up, and they put it on the curbside. What happens?
Well, that really depends on who you've contracted with to pick up your trash. If you use a curbside service, the town does not mandate that that service goes to the town landfill. This is an open market situation, it's a capitalistic situation, and wherever the hauler can bring that material at the least disposal cost, obviously an acceptable disposal site, but at the least disposal cost, he is able to do that. Thereby we keep the cost to the resident and the cost to the local businesses to the degree that we can. We keep them low. If it is cost efficient for them to bring it to us, and we do have a number of haulers in town that use us, they come to us, and it's the normal, same as if a resident brought the material to us. They would go through our residential transfer station, or a curbside collector would come through our scale, access the site, bring the material in, we'd apply the material at the site, compact it, cover it at night, and be ready for operations the next day.
Okay, now I saw a DVD from the Development Authority of the North Country, and it showed the whole process here. So, so let's say your truck does bring it to the landfill, and it dumps whatever it has in it on an area, and I mean, do you go through a second cycle of looking at it to see if it's acceptable stuff to
We do have a waste screening process that we use both for our recycling as well as our residential transfer station, as well as at the active landfill site, at what they call the active face. All of our staff have been through that training program. It's put on by the state. It basically makes sure that nothing hazardous or injurious to the operations gets into the waste. There's a number of materials that are banned from landfill disposal: automotive batteries, tires, mercury-containing switches. So our staff has been trained to look for these types of items in the waste. In addition, there are also some things that, from the facility standpoint, we don't like to see in the waste.
Yes.
Medical waste, for example. If you're home treatment, you're able to actually dispose of that material in your regular household trash. It's not a very safe way of doing it, but it is allowed. We would much prefer that if you're doing home treatment of medical waste and you generate medical waste, that you bring it to us directly from your home. We have a medical waste treatment program at our site that you can bring it in at no cost. We actually ask that you bring it in a sealed, rigid container, a Tide bottle, a Downy container, anything that can be sealed and containerized, a coffee can if that's the size that you need. You bring it in, we accept it, no questions asked, you just prove residency, and we accept it at no cost.
So you're talking about things like syringes and...
Syringes, IV bags, all those types of things that used to be a lot of things that used to be done in the hospital now are done at home with outpatient treatments. And that's generating a whole new waste stream that we didn't historically saw coming to our site because we didn't deal with hospital waste. They deal with their materials separately. But now that they're doing home treatment, we do see some of that material, and there's better ways of handling it, and that's what we've established in our program.
Curious question, and I don't mean to digress too much, but it's pertinent. And we put our garbage for the most part in plastic bags, and there's lots of stuff in there, but styrofoam. Is that stuff biodegradable? Is that a concern of yours? What it's contained in and how that affects what goes into the landfill?
It is a concern of ours from a couple of different perspectives, though. From the standpoint of being able to be handled in the landfill environment, the materials that are biodegradable, which amount for over 80% of the materials that go in there, are paper products, organic in nature, food waste, that type of material, because our base material that we deal with, the majority of the material that we deal with, are residential materials,
right.
Light commercial and residential materials, stuff from your house and my house.
Right.
That material is highly organic. It's 80% plus organic. So yes, that does decompose. The environment in the landfill is not ideal, though, for that decomposition process to occur. It's typically lacking in oxygen and lacking in moisture. It's a normal biological process, but it needs certain things to feed it. And the lack of oxygen slows it down, and the lack of moisture slows it down dramatically, so that it becomes an issue in the long run with that material being only partially biodegradable and not fully biodegradable. You'll only get a certain amount of that material going down to its basic stable form. In regards to styrofoam and that material, what that material goes into the landfill, pretty much 50 years from now, that's what it's going to look like.
It's going to be there, right?
Right.
Okay.
There are some people who have done studies on exhuming old landfills. There's a gentleman by the name of Jaquay who's a garbologist, who's actually an anthropologist by background. And he's actually gone into old landfills and exhumed the materials, and he's seeing organic materials, carrots, newspapers. You can still read the newspapers 50 years after they've been disposed of. That's how lack of efficient decomposition hinders those organics from breaking down. The carrots, they look a little dark on the outside. You cut them open, they're still the bright orange on the inside. They don't decompose. That may change as these landfills change into what they're calling bioreactor landfills, which are actually treatment systems now. But in the case of our site and our landfill, ours is operated as basically a dry tomb landfill, which doesn't provide for that decomposition.
Okay, so basically what you put in there, it decomposes as it will. You don't add chemicals to it.
Nope.
Okay, that's it.
It's as it comes in is how it goes into the landfill is how it will be probably 50 years from now.
Okay. Now, for the most part, I mean, I saw an aerial view in this particular presentation. I think the same holds true for us. I mean, when you look at it, you don't see a lot of garbage there, right?
No, you shouldn't. The only place that you should see garbage is on the active face.
Right.
On a normal operation, on a normal day, you shouldn't see trash, you shouldn't see waste, you shouldn't see blowing debris any place else at the facility. There is a daily cover requirement. Every night after everything stops, the crew comes in and has to apply daily cover to that area that was used that day. Daily cover in our application is called Posi Shell. It's actually similar to a hydroseeder, and it sprays a cover of a cement and fiber-based material over the top of it. Instead of being green like your hydroseeder, ours is gray. And it goes on about 3/8 of an inch thick, and it coats that waste and keeps it in place, basically a little mini cap, so that it's not available to the birds and the environment and all the rest that would normally be in contact if it wasn't covered. And that material we found also is very beneficial because it provides a deodorizing or a odor neutralizing aspect as well, which has been beneficial again to keep the nuisance odors down.
Now, why the course of a day when things are being dumped and left there, I mean, obviously with winds picking up and all that stuff, there's a concern of things
Blowing
shooting
away.
in the air and blowing away. So you
Right.
take precautions to stop that as much as possible. right?
Correct. We have litter fences that we have at the active face that are immediately adjacent to it, and we have 2 rows of litter fence, one that's temporary in the active area, so if we're active in Area 6, there would be a temporary fence around Area 6, as well as the permanent fence. I'd use the analogy, it looks like if you've ever been to a golf ball driving range
Right.
with the big tall black fences, that's what our perimeter fence looks like, and we have that around the site on 3 sides, the 4th side being open to the maintenance facility and the entrance area. But we have it surrounding the site. And then on a regular basis, we go through and clean those fences so that they're not coated with material. The blowing debris, the biggest negative of the blowing debris is those plastic bags. Everybody who's gone to the supermarkets and likes the convenience of plastic bags, they are a landfill's worst nightmare because the wind catches them and they fly. If you have them to dispose of, the best way to dispose of them is put them all together in one bag, tie the top of the bag, put some kind of weight in it, and then throw it out, because then it will be less susceptible to blowing around on the site. But they're the nightmare of the landfill, because we'll chase those for days. After a good wind like we've had recently, we'll be chasing those for days.
So you've heard it here, stop it, right?
Stop it here. If you want to go the more environmentally prudent way, reusable bags, the cloth or canvas bags, or the netting, much better way of going. Much better for the environment, much better for us.
Glad you brought that up. Now you mentioned the word leachate, as a byproduct of what goes on there. So it doesn't sound like a very good thing. What happens with that?
No, leachate isn't a very good thing. When the normal waste do decompose, there's a normal liquid that is generated from that. It carries along with it some of the components that are not very friendly and not very acceptable for discharge. So we collect them in the leachate liner system that's below the landfill, and they come out in a series of pipes that flow into a pump station and ultimately go to the Albany County North Wastewater Treatment Plant for treatment prior to discharge. The materials are not terribly injurious, but they're not friendly either. You're not going to want them around. You wouldn't want to discharge them into your normal rivers or your streams. They need treatment. And that's one of the reasons why they're effective to capture in our systems. And we have not only a capture system, but we have a leak detection system below that, so that we can make sure that we have an efficient system operating, that there isn't a lot of leakage from the cells. No landfill is 100% in regards to leachate capture. Liner systems were constructed by man, so they're always going to be fallible. These systems have been shown to be very effective at reducing the amount of liquid that comes through what we call the primary liner, which is where you collect your leachate. And we deal with very low numbers in the tunes of 20 gallons per acre per day or less on the cells for the areas that we can detect leachate in. So from those areas, we're very comfortable that we're doing a decent job of collecting the leachate, both through the liner system as well as the leak detection system.
Now, there's a lot of environmental issues you have to pay attention to, and I would imagine that you have to make sure that it isn't getting out into some other place. I mean, there's a testing mechanism you have in place.
Actually, every day we have to go through and monitor the site. We have what we call it's a daily site walk, and there are certain environmental areas around the site and certain monitoring areas around the site that have to be checked every day. For both compliance, to make sure the pumps are working, to make sure the meters are calibrated correctly, to also checking our stormwater, because we have stormwater that is discharged from the site as well. On old inactive areas, we're allowed to shed that water through our stormwater management system as long as it's not showing any susceptible or being contacted with anything that's susceptible to contaminating it or as a pollutant. And we have to check that on a daily basis. And we also check the stormwater after every storm.
Oh, really?
Yes, we have guys that their lovely occupation is going out in the bad weather and checking to make sure everything's running right.
Okay. There must be a lot of stormwater, so where does that go?
We actually have 3 primary discharge points from the site. The primary discharge point on the northern part of the site comes from Route 9, crosses our site and discharges to the Mohawk River through a 54-inch stormwater pipe on the northern end of our parcel. The center part of the site goes to a New York State DEC wetland, and we're required to monitor the wetland for accepting the liquid, the stormwater coming off the site. We've also, in addition, constructed additional wetlands as part of the construction of the new landfill. We expanded the wetlands based on the landfill expansion to the tune of around 2 acres. So we've actually added wetlands to our site to improve the overall environmental. The wetlands act like a cleaning agent or a filtering agent, so they improve the water quality coming off the site as well. So that's where the center part of the site goes. And then the southern part of the site right now goes down towards the industrial park that's to the south of us, and that ultimately also discharges down towards, I believe it's the Black Rock Canal.
Okay, okay. Now, I know that I go to the shopping mall or the grocery store and I see birds, I see seagulls, and I know, I've heard from you, there are lots of seagulls up there at the landfill. What do you do about them?
The normal population at our site should be around 2,000 birds, based upon the Fish and Wildlife population study that was done for us. Because of the nature of being next to the river, the normal environment should carry about that many birds. That's a lot of birds. We actually at one point had gotten up to almost 15,000 birds.
That sounds very Hitchcock to me.
Oh, in some cases, it does seem like there's birds everywhere. We've had a good luck working with the Fish and Wildlife, and we've hired them to do bird control for our site. So we typically are under the 2,000 birds that you'd normally see nature providing for our area. But that's still a lot of birds. So we have them there on a 9-month-a-year basis to what they call basically harass the birds to keep them away from the site. The birds perceive the landfill as being a food source.
Absolutely.
And because of that, it's like a deli. They want to get there. If we're not actively filling, they want to go to the deli. And we don't want them going to the deli because they have takeout at the deli. And we don't like them having takeout at the deli. So we need to make sure the waste stays in place, and once it's received, it doesn't go anyplace but in the landfill cells.
Tell me, do you have crows too?
We have
Big
crows.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
we have crows, we have grackens, we have wrens. We have probably a dozen different varieties of birds that inhabit the site. Turkey vultures, turkeys, you name it, we have them. It's actually kind of, from the standpoint of nature, we're fairly diverse where we are. We have a family of foxes that are on one end of the site.
Okay.
We have, I think the foxes are actually after the turkeys, but we've also have a number of different deer and some other animals that populate down by the wetlands especially.
It's only natural.
They like the site. There's very few predators up there for them, and they like the closeness of the site so that they're protected. They feel comfortable there.
I'm sure they tell their friends too.
They may. At times it seems like we accumulate a few more than we really need, but
Now, we talked about gas. I mean,
Yes.
it's a natural byproduct of having this stuff in the ground, and I know I went on the webpage for the town, and you talk about the fires that you see blowing up there. So, is that all you do with it? Is that all you do with the gas?
No, as of March of '06, we installed jointly with a company called Innovative Energy Systems, we installed a landfill gas to electricity project on the southern portion of our site. And by using that plant, we've eliminated most of the candle flares that you mentioned earlier. We direct about 1,500 cubic feet of gas to the landfill gas to electricity project every day, actually every minute, and we produce about 4 megawatts of electricity. It's a much better use of the landfill gas. It's a resource, it's a fuel source to them, and their emissions were significantly lower than our emissions through the flares, so environmentally it's a better way of handling it as well. They've been very effective at using all the gas that we can generate, all the gas that we can capture. So they've really reduced our significant odor issue, that if you emit it to the air, it takes very little amounts of landfill gas to be a malodor, to be a nuisance. And they've really reduced that to a large extent.
Now, do you actually generate the electricity there, or is it? Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a $6 million plant that they put online on the southern portion of our property, and they go directly into the Niagara Mohawk power lines down along the Cohoes Crescent Road and go right out into the grid. And right now the electricity is actually sold in Massachusetts because it's the most lucrative there. And it's proven to be a very good project, both economically for the town as well as environmentally. The town does get a revenue source off this. We had a $250,000 budgeted for the project for '06, and we exceeded that significantly. As you probably imagine, with your electric bills having gone up over '05 and '06, so did the value of electricity that we can sell.
Sure.
So we did very well on the electric sales and the renewable energy credit sales for the plant in '06, and we look forward to '07. We expect to be generating landfill gas. As I said, the landfill's capacity is good through about 2020, and you'll be getting gas off from the facility that's cost effective to collect and to generate electricity from for probably about 15 years after that. Wow. So you've got a long useful life of this plant, and we're looking forward to a very good payback. The contractor that we dealt with, Innovative Energy Systems, is very much in the forefront of developing these projects. In the Northeast, they have much larger plants than us. Seneca Meadows, for example, has got 20 motors. We have 3. So they're very much in the forefront of developing this landfill gas. They have a very nice design that keeps the gas going to the motors very stable, very good quality product, and their emissions rates are very low. So we felt that they were a very good vendor to tie in with.
Now there's also not only the gas, but I mean there's heat that's generated from a landfill.
Right.
So
well, actually, the heat is generated from the motors.
okay.
The landfill gas to electricity project, when it's fully operational with the motors running, produces a tremendous amount of waste heat. And right now, that's one of the areas that we're looking into seriously as to how do we use that waste heat. Do we heat buildings with it? Do we have greenhouses? How do we use the heat best? Because it's another product. It's another valuable commodity that we can potentially market in our area and make it another value for the vendor as well as another value for the town.
Yeah, in the North Country disc I saw, they talked about having it looked like a huge greenhouse. They were doing tomatoes and other vegetables, hydroponic.
Yes.
So very useful.
Innovative Energy Systems has a sister company called H2 Grows, which does hydroponic growing of vegetables. And they use the waste heat, their model facility, or actually it is a model facility. Their model facility is located at Model City Landfill. That's not my choice, that was their terms. But they have about 7.5 acres of greenhouses out there. And they produce about 1 million pounds of tomatoes per acre per year. They get 3 crops of tomatoes per year. And these are vine-ripened, perfect, round, green tomatoes. They're actually sold through Wegmans, the food market out in the Rochester area.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They're actually sold through Wegmans, and they're a premium product because in the middle of winter, you can't get a vine-ripened tomato. Well, they have vine-ripened tomatoes year-round. So they get a premium price for their tomatoes, and they're excellent products. I've seen them, and they're very tasty.
So we might be in the tomato business.
We could potentially be in the tomato business.
Okay. Now, is it true, does the town, is the town's philosophy with the landfill that it should be self-supporting for the most part?
The town has basically taken the tack that everything that we do in regards to solid waste has to be self-supporting.
Okay.
So our entire facility, the recycling, the composting, the hazardous waste days, all of the facilities that we provide through our division have to be funded through the tipping fees for the facility. That includes all of our capital projects for expenditures, all of our equipment, all of our manpower, soup to nuts. Everything has to be covered internally through that funds. And we've been able to do that very successfully over the last several years. Because we are a market facility, we're an open market facility, you can bring your waste to anybody, you can bring it to us, or you can bring it anywhere else. We have to play the market. So the value of waste disposal is dictated by the marketplace, and we've been able to manage that fairly well. One of the things that people always get concerned about with landfills is, are you filling your landfill up too fast?
Right.
Are you taking waste in from outside the area and filling it too fast? Well, we are taking materials in from outside of the area. The way that we manage that, and it's an active management system, we have set the amount of waste that we can receive per year based on the same basis as if we were town only. So if all the waste within the town was directed to go to the landfill, we would generate between 155,000 and 170,000 tons of waste a year. So that's the number that we chose to limit ourselves to, and we actually had it written into our permit
Okay.
Our DEC permit is prefaced on that same tonnage number that we cannot accept any more than that per year. So we can't fill up any faster than if we were town only, but we don't restrict it to having to be waste from the town. If someone within the town can get a better deal going someplace else, so be it. We'll make up the waste from someplace else. And that's what I mean by being an active management system. We manage how much material comes in so that we achieve the same number as if we were town only.
I want to ask you some real basic questions, okay? So,
Okay.
because we're getting down to the end of the wire here, but the hours of operation of the landfill.
Monday through Friday, we're open 7 a.m. until 3,
Okay.
and then on Saturday, we're open 7 till 2. The only operation outside of those hours are our hazardous waste days, and we're having 5 of them this coming year, and they operate basically a half an hour after we close. We start receiving customers, and they operate to either 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, depending on whether it's a weekday night or a Saturday.
Okay, and we'll give a little bit more detail about the hazardous waste days because I think they're very important, and we'll make sure we project that. Now, can anybody go to the and say, I'm going to go to the Colonie landfill and I'm going to take my garbage there?
That depends on what you're bringing in. We, by agreement with the local municipalities around us who also operate solid waste facilities, we don't pirate waste from their residents. If you have demolition materials or you have special waste that you want to get rid of, yes, we will accept those from outside residents. But from the standpoint of your household trash or that type of material, no. If you're in Clifton Park or you're in any place outside of the town, no, we do not accept household trash from residents because of the other facilities that are out there and just in consideration of our neighbors.
Now, as a resident of the town of Colonie, you do ask people to have a permit in order to use it,
If you're
right?
going to use the facility regularly, it's a convenience for our residents. They can obtain a green sticker and put it on the vehicle, and that way they don't get asked for their license each time they come in. It's not required, but it's a good suggestion because otherwise they're always having to dig for their license or some form of identification.
Now, they can get the sticker from you, but elsewhere as well, right?
They can get it at the landfill site anytime that we're open. They're available through the residential transfer station, or they can get them at the town clerk's office.
Okay, now let's do a little bit more detail on the hazardous waste days because I think they're
Okay.
very important. You're starting one, I believe, on April 4th, is it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Our first day will be April 4th. That's a weekday. Our weekdays this year are April 4th, May 2nd, September 12th, and October 3rd. And on those days, we'll be open from 4 until 7. And then we are running a Saturday this year of June 23rd, and they will be open from 3 until 6.
Okay, now can you sort of, in a nutshell, put what is hazardous waste?
One thing, this is household hazardous.
Household, okay, good.
Right, household hazardous waste. This is from residents. This is not business materials. This is not commercial waste. We're restricted by permit for what we can accept. It's got to be from your residents. And basically, if you can think of those things that you buy, your household cleaners, your pesticides, any of your solvents, anything that's under your sink in your kitchen or maybe in your bathroom closet, you used it as a solvent, so you're not going to need it anymore, and it shouldn't be around because you've now got kids running around and they may get into it, or you've got animals that may get around and may get into it. Those are the materials that we really want you to bring in. You can bring in paints, you can bring in varnishes, you can bring in lacquers. There's a whole laundry list on our website of materials that you can bring in.
Is batteries one of them?
Batteries we can
batteries?
actually deal with outside of this program. You
Okay.
can bring in batteries anytime that we're open. Automotive batteries we accept as well as house batteries. There has been a change in the house batteries though that we accept. Most of the ones that we're able to recycle now are actually the rechargeable batteries. So your A's, your C's, all those types of regular batteries are no longer recyclable. There's not enough metal in them to make them valuable for the recyclers to go after the metal to reclaim it. So those are going back in your trash. Now the good news of that is because they've reduced the amount of metals that were in them to the point where the recyclers don't want them, they're also less of an issue going into a landfill.
Okay, so we can dump our flashlight batteries and all those little batteries
Correct.
into our trash now.
Correct.
Okay, good. I'm not sure if I have anything more to ask you. Is there anything more you'd like to tell our viewers?
Well, there's been a couple of changes up on our site. So for those of you who come into our landfill site regularly, we're in the process, we're the facility under construction. And you'll notice we have a temporary recycling station set up adjacent to our waste transfer station. And that's in advance of our new recycling facility going online in in May of this year. We're in the process of doing the reconstruction. It's going to be done with town forces, and it'll be a whole new recycling layout based upon going to a new contractor for our recyclables. The new contractor is County Waste and Recycling, is able to accept our materials from our transfer station, our recycling station now, and they've expanded the number of materials that we can deal with. So we're going to be expanding the types of materials that we handle at the recycling facility to accommodate new containers so that you can bring in more materials and have them recycled and not have to dispose of them. There's a list of them. It's actually a little bit too long to just recite, but there's a list of them that are going to be posted at the facility probably within the next month or so that you can start generating those materials and bringing them in advance. But it's a nice program with a changeover to the new vendor. It's allowed us to broaden the number of materials that we can handle. And again, anything that we can handle through the recycling program is better than going in the landfill.
I just found something out that I didn't realize, that I always thought you had to stop at number 3 on a plastic bottle. I see it's 1 to 7.
Well, as of December, you were correct. But as of January, when we went to the new vendor, we have new program requirements for our plastics. Anything that is a plastic container, and the way we define container is something with a neck. If it has a plastic bottle with a neck, then it's a recyclable container, and we can handle 1 through 7s of those now. We previously had to restrict it to 1s, 2s, and 3s, right. And then at one point we even went down to 1s and 2s. So we're kind of going full circle now. We're going back to the 1s through 7s, so we'll be able to handle more materials.
Can we get more of it?
Yep, we're trying to capture more through that program because, again, it's volume that doesn't have to go in the landfill, and ultimately that's landfill space that can be used for things that do have to go in the landfill.
Good point. Now, a lot of information on the town, on the web page. I mean, lots of things, questions, answers to those questions about what I can take there, can I do this, about clothing, about all sorts of things. So how about giving the website for the landfill?
Okay.
Environmental services.
The environmental services is under the town's website, so it's www.colonie.org. And on the front page, you link to town divisions, town departments, and we're the environmental services division. It's about 2/3 of the page down on the left-hand side, and you click on that link, it'll take you to the division website. And we have everything on there that we could think of, from composting to yard waste, collection days, to recyclables, to hazardous waste days. All that material is in there. We have our fee schedule in there. There's a link to, if you have any questions, frequently asked questions, to if you have questions that aren't on that list, how do you get answers from us? And we have that link to several different people, so we were pretty timely on responses so that people can get their questions answered.
It's very, 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 very good information and very user-friendly. And you also give out the philosophy, your philosophy of the town's program and all that too. So I think it's important for people to check in with that and see.
Well, one of the things that's really nice about our town, and just to give the town a little bit of a plug, having been in a number of different roles in regards to solid waste, one of the things that attracted me to this town was this town wants to do it right. And they are willing to pay the freight to make that happen. And we have probably one of the most comprehensive programs of any of the facilities around. You can go to other municipalities and they may have specific bits and pieces, but we have the whole pie. And because of that, it's been a nice place to work. We also, one of the things that I liked about this municipality is we listen to questions. We've been able to add into our program things that people ask questions about. Why don't we handle a certain material? Or how come I can't dispose of this? Or how do I get rid of this? And we take a serious look at those types of questions to, can we add them into the program, or is there another way of handling it? That's how we added the clothing into the program, for example. Mm-hmm. People were questioning, okay, how do I get rid of materials? I don't know where the Salvation Army boxes are, or what have you. So we located a Salvation Army box on our site, so that when you bring your garbage in to get rid of your garbage and your recyclables to get in with your recyclables, we can now bring your Salvation Army materials in for your clothing. Again, that came from a resident's questions. And that's one of the things that I really liked about working in the town, was we're open to listening to the questions. It doesn't matter who you are or what part of town you're from. If you have a good question, we'd like to hear from you, because we really do look at this as, okay, we're a service business. How do we provide the best service? And that's really what we're about.
Excellent. And on that point, we're going to end the program. I can't thank you enough for being my guest today,
Well, I
Joe.
thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining me on Getting to Know You. I sure learned a lot today. I hope you did too, and I hope you'll join us next week. Until then, have a good one.